it does feel like there's this new, I don't know, like intimacy, but also alienation that comes from that because you have this like socially reinscribed identity and like values that are then, publicly performed by people in a way that you just didn't experience like
It's true.
not that long ago, like 20 years ago before
Yeah.
social media.
Well, yeah, no. I mean, like, sometimes you get like a tree of life voter, right? Where it's like, yeah, I need to vote for Tom Tillis this time. So like my life is like my memories and my waking dreams of 40 years ago. But this is more like, I don't know what you would call this, because I think there's a lot of this voter where it's like they wouldn't be able to verbalize the problem, where it's like, oh yeah, no, we have this like unprecedented access to each other, and performance has become a part of American public life just for regular people in a way that it
Right.
never has in any
Yes.
other society in history. And brains have been rewired in a completely unprecedented way that we do not understand, maybe will not ever understand. But I think we need like a Trey Gowdy type guy to fix that.
Yeah,
It-
just because like those politicians that regardless of any policy, they symbolically stand like in alienation from that. And so it's if it's just a sense of anything, it's just like a recognition of like, okay, yeah, this guy's kind of like me. He gets that this is weird and uncomfortable.
Well, yeah,
uh,
because like the difference like between how like the two parties reconcile with that is, for the Republicans, like the performance in their aspect of the performance that is American life, their performance is being like, oh, I just like live every day like it's 1983, and like eventually I can get us back there.
Yeah.
Whereas the Democrats like lean into it by like looking into the camera and breaking the fourth wall.
we're conducting a focus group with Terrence Malick's Tree of Life voters. Joe, you said American society is different. How has it changed? When I grew up, dinosaurs used to take care of each other. They used to spray kids with DDT. We loved it. What happened to that? Kids are weak nowadays because they're not running through a cloud of DDT. Just like Matt, to your point about like how the internet has changed our culture, I think it's like totally like destabilized the notion of like community, because
Yeah.
like pre-internet, like the community you grew up in, like either you felt apart from it, or you felt like it sort of shaped your values and understanding of the world. You felt like you fit in some way. Either you fit in or you didn't. But
Right,
now the
exactly,
internet,
yes.
there's only one community, and it's like everybody is subject to the standards of like wildly diverging points of view, and like just everyone is on the hook for everyone else in a way that like pre-internet, even if you lived in like a big city, I don't think people had the same sense.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Yeah, like I grew up in my town. Yes, there was like one sort of package of values that was broadly accepted, and I defined myself against it. I was like, I don't like this, but it was a nice clean thing that I could do. That now there's just this cacophony, and everyone is invested not just in like performing the way that we all do in our public interactions, but in specifically performing in relation to this thing. At that, I know that the Zoomers out there are like, what are you even talking about? But that really didn't always used to be that way until very recently it wasn't.
Yeah, I barely remember what it was like, but yeah, no, it is a marked change, to the point that like the frustrating thing is like you lose a little bit every year of what it was like before, to the
Yeah.
point that like your own memories are through this filter.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like, I think that the internet is a very good example of how someone who's even 37 and 38, like, my age, can feel like their childhood that they had, and like the world, the things that they took for granted, or accepted as universal, could be deeply destabilized. However, Joe immediately gets into another thing that's very telling here. So, Kristen Soltis Anderson said, do you have a particular concern for your own community? Robert, tell me about that. Robert, who is black, 50, and an infrastructure analyst from Texas, says crime. Kristen Soltis Anderson says, Joe, you're nodding. Joe, who, keep in mind, is 37 and from New York, says, I grew up with Giuliani. I'm born and raised in New York. I see stuff every day. I take the subways to work, and it's not what it used to be. It's a problem. Now, okay, I have like the exact same background and like age demographic as Joe. Like I grew up in Giuliani's New York as well. I took the subway every day. Like I'm still out on the streets. I still take the subway. And the thing is, like, the vibes have shifted. There has been a vibe shift. You can make fun of
Oh
that you
yeah,
want, but like people's vibes feel fucked up and weird now. But rationally, or for whatever it's worth, crime under Giuliani's New York was across the board categorically probably 3 to 4 times as high as it has been in the 21st century. Like
yeah,
you
that's a
are
huge drop.
in every way, shape, and form less likely to be victimized by crime in New York City now than you were under Giuliani. And like, yes, it has upticked like since the pandemic happened, but it like once it was going down under Giuliani and was by the way, it was going down before Giuliani was in office as
Yes,
well.
that's true.
But it's just like this is the perfect sense of what we were talking about here. It's like it doesn't matter what the crime rate actually is; it's what people feel. And if
Yeah,
people feel, or like the media that they consume, um, shows them only that like mass shootings are happening on the subway. You know what? That didn't happen when I used to grow up. So I can
yeah,
imagine how that can make you feel like shit is getting out of hand and like
yeah,
people are losing control of like the cities and communities that they live in, even
and that,
though
yeah,
like rationally or whatever, like that's not the case, or it's just like
and,
you're safer now than you were then.
and that's why the Democrats are so fucked because they really do. They are stuck in a corner now where all they can try to do is like use data to prove that it's not that bad relative to historic trends, and that has nothing to do with what the subjective experience of living in America feels like.
And again, like another case of like voters, or better yet, people who get excited to join a focus group, describing like something that is kind of real, right? Like the different feeling. And that different feeling, I think, it's a bunch of things. It's stuff we've already described, like the effects of technology and performance on American life, but also like the collapse of the American bargain, right?
Yeah,
That it is a bargain based on sort of comfort, ease of living, some type of like easy advancement that is now impossible
yeah,
with like a collapse in American prestige, American decline, and decline in profit rates. But is again something that like maybe once every literally billion focus groups, you'll get some guy who may be able to describe that.
And to Joe's point, living in New York City, the subways have absolutely gotten more fucked up over the last 5 to 10 years. Like, there is more crime on the subway. There may be less than there used to be, but crime has gone up, and just the general shittiness of subway service and like cleanliness of stations, like it has gotten worse by every metric. And like that's a real thing you can point to about like the decline of American society. So, continuing with the focus group, Danny says nobody follows rules or laws. Stop signs are voluntary. Red lights are voluntary. Nobody gets punished for doing the wrong thing anymore. We reward mediocrity. So yeah, no one's using stop signs anymore. Well, you know what? I mean, nobody uses their signals when they change lanes on the highway either.
nobody
I
wants to
mean,
stop anymore.
um, Saltus Anderson says, my next question. How free do you feel to just be yourself in society these days? I'm seeing a lot of people put zeros up. They're not putting numbers on the board when it comes to just cooling out, feeling yourself, just having fun. They got no rings.
I hate to hear that.
Robert says, you're not free to be yourself anymore because of crime. You've got to be concerned about, if I go out, am I going to be a victim of crime? It's just,
See, that's the thing. It's like
it's just,
technically
yeah,
you always had to make that
yeah.
decision, and you made it in the past if you're that age under much like worse statistical conditions. But because nobody else was talking about it, maybe you didn't think about it. But now, because it's reinforced over and over again in this new digital realm that we're all like stuck in, even if we're not online, this new heightened, yeah, like sense of anxiety, it feels oppressive because now you're feeling compelled to make those kind of weigh those kind of things in a way you didn't before.
And obviously, like the news media, whether it's the New York Times or the New York Post, or certainly like local TV news, has like always played up crime, and has always got ratings based on like pitching lurid tales of crime and street violence to their readership. But I think with the internet and like increased competition among like media conglomerates, this phenomenon has gotten even more like exacerbated. The belief that like whether you live in a city or not, like most people, or it just seems like a lot of people have this attitude that like American cities are like fucking Mad Max. Like if you like
Yeah.
every time you step out of your house, you were immediately like fucking like marauded by like a gang of like, bald youths riding motorcycles or something.
I would hate it if LeBald accosted me while I was on the train.
Derek says, I served in the military. I came back and I'm living my life. People are going to be what they want to be, and I'm going to be what I want to be. So that's it's pretty normal, decent
He's
attitude
free
to
to
have.
be you
Yeah.
and me.
Michael says, I live in Orlando, and when we moved there, it was a beautiful place. Now, right down the
Yeah,
street,
but
people
wrong. I'm gonna throw the flag on that one.
Yeah.
Orlando has never been beautiful for 1 second of its existence.
Yeah. I think we got Cap on the play.
Now, right down the street, people are stealing stuff, breaking into cars, and it's difficult to engage because you're afraid that no matter what you say, someone's going to take offense to it. Even though you may just wanting to be you may just be wanting to ask a valid question and understand something. Soltis Anderson says, "Can you think of examples?" Michael says, "It's almost anything. You can't mention Trump. You can't mention Biden." Joe says, I feel that social media destroyed a lot of the culture that we had. Things used to be private or people just said things and then they regret it after. Christopher says, I'm one of these people that speak against cancel culture. I think the true patriotism is recognizing that regardless of what party you're in, we're all Americans and we should start from that premise. Then we find more reasons to join together rather than find silly reasons to fight against each other. Joe says, Amen. See, this is how I know that these aren't real Republican voters. That they just
I mean, maybe, but it's like I could say, like, tens of millions of people vote. Voter participation is very bad, but I could see this representing at least like a lot of people.
yeah.
Uh, the thing that makes me think like this does represent at least like some slice of people is that the sameness of American desires at the end of the day, which like this specifically, what this guy's asking for, when you boil it down, it is a desire that you could transplant in Bushwick or LA. It's that he wants a risk-free media career.
Ha,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, yeah, it's the closest thing you can get. It's the only remaining like media is the only remaining zone that many people can imagine entering uh, where they wouldn't be able to labor without feeling like they were being hyper exploited.
Right.
It's the only possible terrain left, and it's thanks to that same social media explosion that has alienated people so much from their culture and has made people feel so performative all the time because everyone is always auditioning, either
Yeah,
that they
no,
know it or not.
yeah, and like definitely, this is an incredibly punitive country, and we go through cycles of like what we're punitive over.